Echoes of dread, a solitude of terror on the streets. The city, cloaked in the dense fog of an approaching midnight, lay silent and desolate beneath the dim glow of street lamps. I found myself on the empty streets, the echoes of my footsteps resonating through the eerie stillness. The usual hustle and bustle had long dissipated, leaving behind an unsettling solitude that seemed to amplify the quiet dread settling in my bones. The distant hum of traffic had faded, and the buildings loomed like silent sentinels, their windows reflecting only shadows. The flickering streetlights cast elongated figures on the pavement, creating an otherworldly dance of darkness. My breath materialized in the cold air as I navigated the labyrinth of alleys and forgotten corners, each step echoing with a haunting reverberation. A sense of isolation clung to the atmosphere, intensified by the encroaching fog that blurred the boundaries between the tangible and the unseen. The streets, usually teeming with life, now bore witness to a solitude that bordered on the surreal. The occasional gust of wind carried with it a ghostly whisper, as if the city itself held secrets only revealed in the silence of the night. The path ahead seemed to stretch into infinity, a narrow corridor flanked by silent buildings and enveloped in an oppressive darkness. I pulled my coat tighter around me, the fabric offering little solace against the growing unease that gnawed at the edges of my consciousness. The echoes of my footsteps became a steady drumbeat, a disconcerting rhythm that mirrored the palpitations of my anxious heart. As I turned a corner, the faint glow of a distant streetlight illuminated a graffiti-covered wall. In the stark light, the vibrant colors of the graffiti took on a sinister quality. The once expressive art now twisted into menacing shapes and distorted faces. I quickened my pace, the unsettling ambiance pushing me to escape the oppressive clutches of the empty streets. The fog thickened, obscuring my surroundings in a swirling sea of gray. Shadows danced in the periphery of my vision, creating phantasmagoric shapes that seemed to slink away as I turned to confront them. The solitude on the streets had transformed into a visceral terror, a feeling of being watched by unseen eyes that lurked in the mist. I reached a deserted park, its swings swaying gently in the night breeze, a haunting reminder of the absent laughter that usually filled the air. The playground, bathed in the diffused glow of the fog, became an unsettling tableau. The echo of a distant siren pierced the silence, adding an ominous layer to the atmosphere that clung to the night. A flicker of movement caught my attention, a silhouette, barely discernible in the thick fog, moving with an unnatural grace. My heart quickened, and a chill ran down my spine. The figure seemed to glide through the mist, a spectral presence that defied the laws of the tangible world. I stood frozen, my breath caught in my throat as the apparition vanished into the shadows. Dread settled over me like a heavy cloak as I resumed my solitary journey. The fog, now more dense than ever, seemed to cocoon me in a claustrophobic embrace. The streetlights flickered, casting fleeting moments of visibility in the opaque surroundings. I became acutely aware of every sound, the distant wail of the wind, the rustle of unseen creatures, and the unsettling silence that followed each echo of my footsteps. A dimly lit alley yawned before me, a narrow passage that invited trepidation. I hesitated but pressed on, drawn to the unknown with a morbid curiosity. The oppressive stillness deepened, and the air seemed charged with a malevolent energy that left me breathless. As I navigated the labyrinthine alley, the walls closed in, the flickering lights casting elongated shadows that seemed to reach out for me. The echoes of my footsteps now resonated with a hollow cadence, bouncing off the brick walls in a disconcerting symphony. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was not alone, that unseen eyes observed my every move from the concealed recesses of the narrow passage. A sudden guttural growl echoed through the alley, chilling me to the core. I spun around, my heart pounding, but the shadows revealed nothing. The fog had become an impenetrable shroud, concealing the source of the ominous sound. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead as I quickened my pace, desperate to escape the claustrophobic confines of the haunting alley. The fog lifted, unveiling a desolate intersection where the streetlights struggled to penetrate the lingering mist. I felt exposed, vulnerable to the unseen forces that seemed to converge on my solitary figure. The echo of distant footsteps added to the dissonant melody that now accompanied my every move. An unsettling stillness settled over the intersection, broken only by the distant hum of an approaching engine. Headlights pierced through the fog, revealing a solitary figure standing at the edge of the intersection. The silhouette, backlit by the glow of the headlights, sent a shiver down my spine. As the vehicle approached, the headlights revealed a face distorted by a twisted grin, eyes gleaming with an unsettling malevolence. Panic seized me and I sprinted in the opposite direction, the echo of my footsteps drowning in the disconcerting cacophony that now surrounded me. I darted through alleys and side streets, the relentless pursuit of the unknown figure haunting my every step. The city, once a familiar landscape, had transformed into a nightmarish labyrinth, where terror lurked around every corner. I dared not glance back, fearing the apparition's relentless advance. The echoes of dread clung to the very air I breathed, an intangible malevolence that seeped into my bones. I stumbled into a dimly lit square, my breath ragged, and the oppressive silence descended once more. The phantom figure, though unseen, seemed to linger in the shadows, a spectral presence that defied explanation. Exhausted and disoriented, I leaned against a cold brick wall, the echoes of my racing heart reverberating in the hollow silence. The square, bathed in the feeble glow of a flickering street lamp, offered no solace. The terror that had gripped me on the empty streets now clung to the very fabric of the night. As I stood alone in the dim light, a haunting realization settled over me. The echoes of dread were not confined to the empty streets or the enigmatic figures that lurked in the fog. They were a reflection of the terror that resided within, an intangible fear that transcended the confines of the night. The solitude of the streets had become a canvas for the shadows of my own dread to paint their haunting masterpiece, leaving me to navigate the chilling echoes of my own fears in the lonely embrace of the darkness. The haunting path, alone in the moonlit woods. The moon hung low in the ink-black sky, casting an ethereal glow on the dense canopy of the woods that enveloped me. A haunting stillness settled over the landscape as I stepped onto the narrow, winding path, my senses heightened by the solitude that surrounded me. The crunch of fallen leaves beneath my boots echoed through the trees, a stark reminder of my solitary journey into the heart of the moonlit woods. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and the faint rustling of nocturnal creatures hidden in the shadows. The moonbeams filtered through the thick branches overhead, creating a mosaic of light and shadows that played tricks on my perception. Despite the beauty of the scene, an undeniable unease clung to the atmosphere, as if the very woods were holding their breath, waiting for something to unfold. I tightened the grip on the strap of my backpack, my only companion on this midnight expedition. The path stretched out before me like a mysterious corridor, inviting yet foreboding. A sense of trepidation gnawed at my gut, but an inexplicable curiosity pushed me forward into the moonlit abyss. The deeper I ventured, the denser the woods became, the trees standing tall and imposing, their branches entwined like skeletal fingers against the night sky. The moon, now partially obscured by drifting clouds, cast fleeting shadows that danced along the path, creating an illusion of movement in the otherwise static scene. As I walked, the silence was occasionally broken by the hoot of an owl or the distant howl of a nocturnal creature. Each sound, though natural, echoed with an unsettling resonance in the quietude of the moonlit woods. My imagination ran wild, conjuring images of unseen eyes watching my every step from the depths of the darkness. The path twisted and turned, leading me deeper into the heart of the woods. The air grew colder, and a spectral mist crept along the forest floor, shrouding the path in an otherworldly haze. My breath hung in the air like ghostly tendrils as I pressed on, guided only by the moonlight that filtered through the looming trees. A soft breeze whispered through the leaves, carrying with it a haunting melody that seemed to emanate from the very heart of the woods. The sound was both enchanting and disconcerting, as if the woods themselves were singing a song that only the moonlit night could comprehend. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end and a chill ran down my spine. As I rounded a bend in the path, the moon emerged from behind the clouds, bathing the woods in an intense silver glow. It revealed an ancient gnarled tree standing alone in a small clearing, its twisted branches reaching toward the heavens. The air around it seemed charged with an otherworldly energy, and an inexplicable pull drew me closer. The ground beneath the tree was littered with fallen leaves, forming a natural carpet that crunched softly under my boots. The haunting melody, now more pronounced, seemed to emanate from the very branches of the ancient tree. I stood there captivated by the surreal beauty of the scene, feeling a connection to something far beyond the realm of my understanding. As I reached out to touch the rough bark of the tree, a sudden gust of wind whispered through its branches. The melody intensified, surrounding me in a symphony of ethereal notes. The woods, once silent, now seemed to come alive with a spectral energy that pulsed through the very fabric of the night. Lost in the mesmerizing embrace of the moonlit woods, I became aware of a faint glow at the edge of the clearing. Intrigued, I approached cautiously, my senses alert to the unfolding mystery. As I drew closer, the glow revealed itself to be an ancient, weathered lantern hanging from a low branch. The soft light illuminated a narrow, hidden path leading deeper into the woods. The invitation was subtle but undeniable, and my curiosity overpowered any lingering trepidation. With the lantern in hand, I embarked on the newly discovered trail, the moonlit woods now embracing me in a world that seemed to exist beyond the boundaries of reality. The path twisted and turned, weaving through ancient trees and moss-covered rocks. The spectral mist clung to the air, creating an otherworldly ambiance that blurred the line between dream and reality. The haunting melody accompanied my every step, echoing through the moonlit woods like a ghostly guide leading me into the unknown. As I delved further into the depths of the woods, the lantern's glow flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced on the trees. The once familiar moonlit path transformed into an enigmatic labyrinth, and a sense of disorientation settled over me. The haunting melody became more elusive, now a distant echo that teased the edges of my perception. The air grew heavy with anticipation, and an inexplicable tension hung in the atmosphere. A surreal tableau unfolded before me. Ancient stones arranged in a circular pattern, illuminated by the soft glow of the lantern. Symbols, arcane and mysterious, adorned the stones, speaking of rituals long forgotten by the passage of time. A sudden realization struck me. I had stumbled upon a sacred grove hidden within the moonlit woods. The haunting melody reached a crescendo, a chorus of voices that seemed to resonate from the very earth beneath my feet. The energy within the grove was palpable, and I felt like an intruder in a space that existed beyond the comprehension of mortal minds. As I stood in the center of the grove, the lantern's glow pulsated in harmony with the ethereal voices. The symbols on the stones seemed to come alive, shimmering with an otherworldly light. It was as if the moonlit woods had opened a portal to a realm where the veil between the spiritual and material was thin. The haunting melody shifted, becoming a melancholic lament that echoed through the sacred grove. The voices, though indistinct, carried emotions that transcended language, a mixture of sorrow, longing, and a profound connection to the mysteries of the night. In that moment, time seemed to stand still. The moonlit woods, once a source of trepidation, had revealed a hidden sanctuary steeped in ancient magic. The haunting path I had embarked upon led me not into darkness, but into an illuminated realm where the boundaries between reality and the mystical blurred. As the first light of dawn began to tinge the sky, the ethereal voices faded and the glow of the lantern waned. The sacred grove, bathed in the soft moonlight, gradually succumbed to the encroaching daylight. The symbols on the stones, once vibrant, now faded into weathered carvings, preserving the secrets of the moonlit woods until the next nocturnal visitor dared to tread the haunting path. Whispers of the Hollow, a solitary journey. The night was draped in an eerie stillness as I set out on my solitary journey through the desolate landscape. The air was thick with a mysterious calm, broken only by the hushed whispers of the wind that danced through the gnarled branches of ancient trees. I found myself on a narrow path, bordered by towering woods on either side, their skeletal limbs casting long, foreboding shadows. The moon hung like a pale lantern in the midnight sky, its feeble light barely piercing the darkness that enveloped the hollow. As I walked, the crunch of gravel beneath my shoes seemed to echo louder than ever, resonating in the unsettling silence. The hollow, rumored to be haunted by the spirits of the long-forgotten, exuded a chilling ambiance that clung to the air. The path meandered deeper into the heart of the hollow, and with each step, the whispers of the wind evolved into an indistinct murmur that seemed to carry secrets from the past. The gnawing sense of isolation gnawed at me, a solitary traveler in a world steeped in a spectral history. The moonlight flickered through the twisted branches overhead, casting ethereal patterns on the ground. Shadows danced along the path, creating an illusion of movement that played tricks on my senses. I tightened the scarf around my neck, a feeble attempt to ward off the unsettling chill that seemed to seep through the very fabric of the night. As I approached a dilapidated bridge spanning a murky stream, the whispers intensified. Soft, spectral voices seemed to rise from the depths of the hollow, carried by the wind that rustled through the dry leaves. I strained to decipher the words, but they remained elusive, as if the very trees were engaged in a conversation that transcended mortal comprehension. The bridge creaked under my weight, the sound echoing through the hollow. An uneasy feeling settled in the pit of my stomach, and I hesitated for a moment, contemplating the decision to continue. The whispers grew louder, beckoning me forward with an almost ethereal insistence. Against my better judgment, I pressed on, the solitude of the journey a heavy burden on my shoulders. As the path wound through the heart of the hollow, the moonlight became increasingly obscured by the looming branches overhead. The darkness intensified, and the air grew thick with an otherworldly presence. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, as if unseen eyes followed my every move. The whispers morphed into haunting melodies, a spectral symphony that resonated through the hollow. The wind carried the ethereal notes, creating an atmosphere of melancholy that enveloped me like a shroud. I quickened my pace, the disconcerting serenade urging me forward even as the rational part of my mind screamed for retreat. Amidst the trees, I noticed ancient gravestones, weathered by time and overgrown with moss. The moonlight revealed faded inscriptions, marking the resting places of those long forgotten. The whispers crescendoed into an unsettling chorus, and the shadows seemed to come alive, dancing around the tombstones like wraiths in the night. A sudden gust of wind extinguished the lanterns that lined the path, plunging me into near-complete darkness. The whispers now echoed with a spectral urgency, the unseen voices pleading or warning I couldn't discern. Panic gripped me, and I fumbled for my flashlight, the beam cutting through the oppressive darkness and revealing the ethereal figures that lingered at the edge of perception. The hollow itself seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. The trees quivered as if alive, their branches reaching out like spectral fingers. The whispers took on a desperate tone, the voices growing louder and more insistent. I stumbled forward, my senses overwhelmed by the surreal experience unfolding in the heart of the hollow. Through the thick curtain of shadows, I glimpsed a clearing bathed in an otherworldly glow. The whispers guided me toward the center where an ancient, gnarled tree stood, its branches stretching towards the heavens. The ground beneath it was adorned with faded symbols and arcane markings, a testament to a forgotten ritual or an ancient ceremony. The whispers crescendoed, converging into a haunting chorus that resonated within the hollow. I stood at the epicenter, surrounded by the unseen spirits of the past. The air crackled with an otherworldly energy, and the spectral figures that lingered in the shadows seemed to converge toward the ancient tree. As I gazed upon the ethereal scene, a profound sense of connection with the hollow washed over me. The whispers, once unsettling, now seemed to carry the weight of forgotten stories and untold histories. The spirits of the hollow, rather than malevolent entities, appeared to be guardians of the memories that lingered in the heart of the night. With a final, haunting crescendo, the whispers faded, leaving behind a profound stillness. The moon emerged from the clouds, casting a silvery glow on the landscape. The ancient tree stood silent, its branches no longer reaching out like spectral fingers. The hollow, having shared its secrets, returned to a tranquil slumber. I retraced my steps, the path now devoid of the unsettling whispers that had guided me through the heart of the night. The hollow, though still cloaked in mystery, felt like a place of introspection and communion with the spectral echoes of the past. As I emerged from the edge of the woods, the first light of dawn painted the horizon, and the hollow retreated into the realm of folklore and dreams. That lined Elm Street now appeared as looming sentinels, their windows like vacant eyes watching my every move. With a sigh, I began my solitary journey home. The echo of my footsteps reverberated against the empty buildings, creating a haunting cadence that mirrored the beating of my anxious heart. I tried to shake off the unease settling in the pit of my stomach, convincing myself that it was merely the result of a long day. As I turned a corner, a flicker of movement caught my eye. Startled, I glanced around, only to find the emptiness of the street staring back at me. The shadows played tricks on my perception, and I chided myself for succumbing to irrational fear. Still, an unsettling feeling lingered, as if unseen eyes were following my every step. The streetlights flickered intermittently, casting intermittent pools of light and plunging the surroundings into deeper darkness. With each flicker, my surroundings seemed to shift, distorting the familiar into something more sinister. I quickened my pace, the rhythmic tapping of my shoes on the pavement echoing louder in the oppressive stillness. As I approached the dimly lit alley that connected Elm Street to the residential neighborhood, a shiver ran down my spine. The narrow passage seemed to stretch endlessly into the unknown, the shadows within concealing secrets that my imagination dared not explore. Hesitant but with no alternative route, I pressed forward, the echo of my footsteps now accompanied by the hollow whispers of the night. Midway through the alley, the oppressive silence shattered. Faint footsteps, barely audible but undeniably present, echoed behind me. My breath caught in my throat as I strained to listen, convinced that my senses were playing tricks on me. The footsteps persisted, growing steadily louder with each passing moment. A chill settled over me as I realized that I was not alone on Elm Street. Panic gripped my chest and I dared not glance over my shoulder to confront the unseen presence. Instead, I quickened my pace, the footsteps matching my hurried gait. Fear gnawed at my sanity as I contemplated the terror that lurked just beyond the reach of the dim streetlights. The alley seemed to stretch on indefinitely, the exit appearing no closer than when I had entered. The footsteps, now an unrelenting echo, pursued me with an unsettling determination. Desperation set in as I fumbled for my phone, fingers trembling as I dialed a friend's number. The distant ringtone felt like a lifeline, a connection to safety in the midst of the encroaching darkness. "Hello?" The familiar voice on the other end provided a momentary sense of relief. But before I could utter a word, the call dropped, leaving me in a chilling void of silence. Panic surged as I stared at the lifeless screen, the realization sinking in that I was truly alone, cut off from any form of assistance. As I emerged from the alley, the footsteps persisted, now accompanied by a soft, haunting melody, a chilling whistle that seemed to mock my attempts to escape. The residential neighborhood, once a haven, now felt like a labyrinth of uncertainty. The streetlights cast long, distorted shadows that seemed to reach out, threatening to envelop me in their inky grasp. I approached my apartment building, a looming structure that offered the promise of refuge. With trembling hands, I fumbled for my keys, the metallic jangle a stark contrast to the oppressive silence that surrounded me. As the door swung open, I hurried inside, slamming it shut behind me with a sense of momentary security. The footsteps and whistling persisted, now muffled by the barrier of the door. I peered through the peephole, my heart pounding in my chest. A shadowy figure stood on the dimly lit street, obscured by the cover of darkness. The unsettling whistle lingered in the air, sending shivers down my spine. A sinking feeling set in as I realized that the nightmare had followed me home. The footsteps in the shadows were no longer confined to Elm Street. They had invaded my sanctuary. I retreated into the safety of my apartment, locking every door and window in a desperate attempt to keep the unseen stalker at bay. Hours passed, each minute dragging on like an eternity. The footsteps and whistling persisted, an unrelenting reminder of the terror that lurked just beyond my perception. I dared not venture outside, my apartment now a fortress against the unknown. As the first light of dawn painted the sky, the haunting sounds outside gradually faded. The footsteps retreated, leaving behind a lingering sense of dread. Exhausted and drained, I cautiously opened the door, half expecting the shadows to reach out and drag me into the abyss. The deserted streets of Elm Street now seemed peaceful, bathed in the soft glow of morning light. I ventured outside, the remnants of the night's terror still fresh in my mind. The footsteps in the shadows had vanished with the night, leaving behind an unanswered question, a mystery that haunted my every step on the once familiar streets of Elm Street. The Midnight Stalker, a lone walk home. The air was thick with an unsettling silence as I stepped out of the dimly lit pub onto the desolate streets. The flickering streetlights cast eerie shadows, and an unsettling chill ran down my spine. It was midnight, and I found myself on the eerily quiet path leading home. Little did I know that this seemingly routine walk would turn into a nightmare. The echo of my footsteps bounced off the empty buildings that lined the narrow street. The only sounds were the distant hum of a few street lamps and the occasional rustle of leaves stirred by the light breeze. I tightened my grip on the strap of my backpack, a feeble attempt to ward off the growing unease that gnawed at my senses. As I ventured further into the darkness, the oppressive stillness seemed to intensify. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, though the deserted streets offered no hiding places for prying eyes. Glancing around, I saw nothing but the cold, silent structures that loomed over me like silent sentinels. My pace quickened involuntarily as if my subconscious was urging me to escape an unseen danger. The glow of the streetlights became sporadic, leaving stretches of the path shrouded in shadows. It was during one of these moments of darkness that I heard a faint, echoing sound behind me. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end as I strained to listen. Footsteps, soft, deliberate, and distinctly out of sync with mine. A chill ran down my spine as I quickened my pace, my heart pounding in my chest. I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination playing tricks on me, but the persistent rhythm of the footsteps persisted. I stole a glance over my shoulder, but the shadows swallowed any trace of the source. I turned a corner, hoping to shake off the unsettling presence, but the footsteps continued to follow me, now echoing off the narrow walls of the alley. Panic set in as I realized that I was not alone on this forsaken path. Every step I took, the unseen pursuer mirrored, growing closer with each passing moment. Fear gripped me, and I fumbled for my phone, fingers trembling as I dialed a friend's number. The distant ringtone seemed to mock my desperation as I begged for someone to pick up. No answer. The isolation of the deserted streets became suffocating, and a sinking realization set in. I was truly on my own. My heart raced as I reached my front door, my trembling fingers struggling to find the right key. The footsteps, now agonizingly close, quickened their pace. Panic overcame reason, and I burst through the door, slamming it shut behind me. My breath caught in my throat as I leaned against the door, desperately listening for any signs of pursuit. The house was silent, and I hesitated to look through the peephole, fearing what I might find. With a deep breath, I gathered the courage to peer outside. The empty street stretched before me, devoid of any visible threat. I sighed in relief, convinced that the ordeal was over. Little did I know the nightmare had only just begun. As I retreated into the safety of my home, an ominous feeling lingered. I locked every door and window, but the sense of being watched persisted. I paced nervously through the rooms, glancing out the windows as if expecting to see an unwelcome figure lurking in the shadows. Hours passed, and fatigue eventually overcame my anxiety. I decided to take refuge in my bedroom, but the quiet of the night was shattered by a sudden knock on the door. My heart leaped into my throat as I approached cautiously, peering through the peephole once again. A figure stood on the doorstep, shrouded in darkness. Fear paralyzed me as our eyes met through the distorted lens of the peephole. The midnight stalker had found me. The realization struck with a sickening thud, and a bone-chilling voice whispered through the door, "I've been waiting for you." In that moment, the solitary walk home had transformed into a relentless pursuit, and the shadows that clung to the night became my inescapable tormentor. The nightmare had taken residence within the walls of my supposed sanctuary, and as the minutes ticked by, I understood that there was no escape from the horror that lurked in the darkness.